My name is Emily Carter, and I was 35 years old when my entire life almost shattered in front of a room full of people who thought they knew me. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, the day I celebrated a miracle I had waited years for. But instead it became the moment everything I believed in was tested. A pregnant stranger walked into my baby shower, looked straight at my husband, called him honey, and then calmly announced that she was his wife and carrying his child. In that instant, the room turned against him, and almost against me too, until I asked one question that changed everything. That afternoon had started like a dream I had replayed in my head for years. The house was glowing with soft golden light filtering through the curtains, and delicate decorations in shades of pink and white covered every corner. There was gentle music playing in the background, the kind that made everything feel warm and safe, while laughter echoed from every direction. Friends, family, people who had stood by us and those who had only heard parts of our story. They were all there, smiling, celebrating, surrounding me with a kind of joy I had almost forgotten existed. For 7 years, I had waited for this moment. 7 years of hoping, praying, and silently breaking when things did not go the way I dreamed. I had sat in cold waiting rooms, stared at test results that never said what I needed them to say, and forced myself to smile at other people's happiness while carrying my own quiet sadness. There were nights when I cried so quietly that even I could barely hear myself, and mornings when I looked in the mirror and pretended I was still strong. Through all of that, there was one person who never let me fall apart completely. My husband Daniel. Daniel was not just supportive, he was steady in a way that made everything else feel manageable. When people whispered behind my back, he stepped forward without hesitation and defended me. When I felt like giving up, he held my hand and reminded me that our story was not over yet. He never once blamed me, never once made me feel like I was the reason for our struggles. Instead, he carried the weight with me, quietly, patiently, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That day, as I stood in the center of the room, I placed my hand gently over my stomach and felt a kind of peace I had not known in years. This was real. After everything, it had finally happened. I caught my reflection in the window for a brief moment, and there was something different in my eyes. Not just happiness, but relief, like I had survived something long and painful and finally reached the other side. Daniel walked toward me through the crowd, holding a small wrapped box in his hands. His expression was soft, almost shy, the same way it had been when we first met. He handed me the gift and told me it was just something small, but I knew him well enough to understand that it was never just something small. Everything he did carried meaning. I smiled and told him that he had already given me everything I could ever want, but he shook his head gently, insisting that it was not enough. That was always how he spoke, as if he was constantly trying to give more, even when he had already given more than anyone else ever could. People gathered closer around us, joking, laughing, making comments about how special this baby would be after everything we had gone through. I laughed along with them, but deep inside I knew this was not just about happiness, this was about survival. We had endured years of disappointment and heartbreak to stand in that moment, surrounded by love and finally able to celebrate. When the cake was brought out, everyone started clapping, and someone called out for me to make a wish. I closed my eyes instinctively, but then I realized something that made me smile even more. For the first time in years, I did not have anything left to wish for. Everything I had prayed for was already there in front of me. When I opened my eyes, I looked at Daniel, and he smiled back at me with the same quiet reassurance he had always given me. The room felt complete, like nothing could possibly go wrong anymore. That was the exact moment the door opened. At first, it was subtle, a slight shift in the room, a pause in the laughter, a silence that spread slowly like a ripple through the crowd. I turned my head, following the direction of everyone's gaze, and that was when I saw her. She stood at the entrance, visibly pregnant, one hand resting on her stomach as she looked straight at Daniel with a strange, almost confident smile. She did not hesitate or look unsure. Instead, she walked into the room as if she belonged there, as if she had every right to be part of this moment. People moved aside instinctively, whispering to each other, confusion spreading across their faces. I felt a tight knot form in my chest as she made her way toward us. each step echoing louder than the last in the sudden silence. She stopped just a few feet away from us and looked directly at Daniel before speaking in a soft, familiar tone. She called him honey. Everything inside me froze. The word echoed in my ears louder than any scream could have been, and for a second, I could not even breathe. The room had gone completely silent, every single person watching, waiting for something to make sense. Then she turned her eyes toward me, her expression calm but unsettling, and said something that felt like it shattered the ground beneath my feet. She told me that she was his wife. She did not stop there. She said they had been married for 3 years, that she was carrying his child, and that he had kept her hidden from everyone. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed, as if she had gone over these words many times before. I felt my legs weaken, my heart racing so fast it hurt. I looked at Daniel, searching his face for anything that could explain what was happening, but he looked just as shocked as I felt. His expression was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. He kept repeating that he did not know her, that he had never seen her before. But his words were drowned out by the evidence she began to present. Photos of them together, messages filled with affection, and even what looked like a marriage document. Every piece of proof she showed made the room more chaotic, more divided, more convinced that Daniel was guilty. People started turning on him, voices rising, accusing him, questioning everything. I could feel their judgment pressing in from all sides, their eyes shifting between him and me, waiting to see how I would react. For a moment, I felt myself slipping, the weight of everything threatening to crush me completely. 7 years of trust, of love, of shared pain and hope. All of it suddenly felt fragile, like it could break at any second. But then something inside me pushed back. A memory surfaced, clear and steady, cutting through the noise around me. It was from years ago, a quiet moment when Daniel and I had made a promise to each other. He had looked at me with complete honesty and told me that no matter what happened, no matter how difficult things became, he would never betray me. He said he could fail in many ways, but that was one thing he would never do. That memory grounded me in a way nothing else could. I looked at him again, really looked at him, not at the chaos, not at the evidence, but at the man I had spent years with. And what I saw was not guilt, it was fear, not of being exposed, but of losing me. That was all I needed. I wiped my tears, took a slow breath, and stepped forward, my voice calm but firm as I spoke for the first time since everything had started. I said that no matter what anyone showed me, I knew one thing for certain, my husband would never cheat on me. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. There was weight behind my words, something that made people pause and reconsider. Then I turned to the woman and told her that if she was truly his wife, she should be able to answer something simple. I asked her about him, about the things that defined who he was, the habits, the dreams, the details only someone close to him would know. She hesitated. Her answers were wrong, not just slightly off, but completely disconnected from who Daniel really was. She spoke about things that did not match his personality, his values, his life. And slowly, I watched as doubt spread through the room, replacing the certainty that had been there moments before. Her confidence began to crumble, her composure slipping as she realized she could not maintain the story anymore. When I mentioned calling the police, she broke completely. Through tears, she admitted that everything had been a lie. She said she had been paid to do it. The room shifted again, but this time in a different direction. People turned, searching for the truth behind her confession, and when she pointed toward the crowd, everything became clear. It was someone we knew, someone Daniel trusted, his business partner. The betrayal that followed was deeper than anything we had faced before, not because of what had happened, but because of who had caused it. The man admitted that he had done it out of jealousy, out of resentment for the life Daniel had built, and in that moment, every ounce of anger in the room turned toward him. He was removed from the house without dignity, without support, left to face the consequences of what he had done. When it was over, the room slowly returned to normal, but nothing felt the same. People apologized, tried to explain themselves, but I barely heard any of it. My focus was only on Daniel. He walked toward me, his eyes filled with emotion, and apologized even though he had done nothing wrong. I shook my head and told him that he did not need to be sorry, because the only thing that mattered was that we had stood together. As I held him, I realized something important. Trust is not tested when things are easy, it is tested when everything falls apart, when the world stands against you, and you still choose to believe in each other. That day was supposed to celebrate a new life, and in a way, it still did. Not just the child we were bringing into the world, but the strength of the life we had built together, because in the end, we did not just survive the storm. We proved that nothing could break us,